a brand new video. Today we're doing 2 college football player props here on PrizePicks for Saturday, October 7th. Before we get started, check out the link in the description below, you guys. Hop into our premium Discord, $9.30 per month, 31 cents per day, you guys. In my opinion, one of the cheaper premium Discords that is out. That's where I post all the plays I'm making on PrizePicks. We also have other premium cappers in there that post all of their plays, research, and analysis. Super positive community, you guys. Everyone in there just really trying to help each other cash. Go ahead and check out the link in the description below. Actually, just wanted to share with you guys. I paired 7 different tacos this week, and I cashed on all 7 pairs. So, again, I posted results here on the YouTube community tab. You go to check out that link. But, again, all these taco pairs were posted in the premium Discord. So, no more on that. You guys don't really want to push the Discord on you guys too heavy here. I got 2 free player props here for today's video, though. College football, Saturday, October 7th. We're really deep into the college football season. And it's been a weird one, right? It's been definitely a weird up and down kind of ride for us here with these videos, but definitely looking to hit on both these plays this weekend. Again, I need to mention I'm not a gambling expert, and this is not financial advice. These are simply plays I'm personally looking at making. Hopefully give you guys some insight and analysis to then make your own player prop decisions here. Again, no one is pressing submit on those parlays other than yourself. So, PrizePicks, they did give us a Carson Beck discount here. It's about 40-yard discount on the over on his pass yards. Obviously, going to be playing the over on it. I think it has like a pretty good odds to hit. I'm probably going to be pairing it with something. I'll post a pair in the Discord, but wanted to share that with you guys. But again, 2 plays. Let's not waste any time. Let's go. So the first play is going to be one that if you're in the Discord, you guys know that this player has sold us maybe twice now this season on just times we've taken him. But in this matchup here against Ole Miss, I have to go with Jefferson, and I'm going to take his over 21.5 fantasy score here. And also, I just want to mention, I think I'm only moving forward for these videos, I'm only going to be targeting quarterbacks. Only because college football quarterbacks, it's just the most consistent. I think there's the safest floor for those player props to usually hit. Obviously, we've taken unders, and those have been successful too with quarterbacks. But just given the odds that they have the ball in their hands the most, I really like specifically college football targeting quarterbacks. NFL is a little bit different, but college football targeting quarterbacks is honestly where the money is. So KJ Jefferson over 21.5 fantasy score. We take a look quickly at his last 5. Hasn't had the season a lot of people were expecting him to have, and really hasn't had the season that he had last season, right? This through 5 games this season has gone over this line twice, right? 28 and 28. 28 against LSU and 28 against, I don't know what school this is, WC, I'm not sure, maybe FCS school, WCU, which is going to be Western Carolina, right? Obviously a blowout on that one, but let's just get into why I like this play. So, first of all, this matchup, Ole Miss, 61.5 over-under. Right, any over, in my opinion, like 57. It's a great game environment, especially Mississippi's going to be 13-point favorites in this one. And the line actually moved for Mississippi to be even favorites even more. So with the 61 over-under, Mississippi being 13-point favorites, I'm expecting this game to be a shootout. Almost every game Mississippi's been in this season has been a shootout. It's kind of just how it works with the Lane Kiffin offense. Offense is prolific. Defense is not very good at all. But taking a look at KJ Jefferson, like I said, right, over this line in 2 games this season, 26.4 against LSU. He threw for 289 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 2 picks. Also had 16 carries for 48 yards on the ground. But if we go back to last season, right, KJ Jefferson, he cleared the over on this in every game last year except for 2 games. Right? I mean, look at these fantasy score totals for KJ Jefferson last year. 43, 37, 31, 30, 29, 29, 25, 23, 23, and 21 and 14. And his 14 miss came against obviously a very stout and elite Alabama defense last season. But for 21.5 for KJ Jefferson in this matchup, somewhat of a narrative-based matchup. If we go back last season, right, he faced Mississippi at home. He finished with 23.4 fantasy, right? 168 yards in the air, 3 passing touchdowns, another 47 yards on the ground. No turnovers and no rushing touchdowns. But if we go back to 2021, right, KJ Jefferson's sophomore season, he had probably one of the best college football games in recent memory of any player. We look at this at Ole Miss, you guys, the same matchup, same scenario at Ole Miss as he gets this weekend. At Ole Miss, 50.5 fantasy points. He threw for 326 yards in the air, 3 passing touchdowns, along with 85 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns, you guys. 6 total touchdowns. Actually 400 total yards and 6 total touchdowns, you guys. Played 101 snaps, and that game was just absolutely insane, right? That game finished 52-51. KJ Jefferson, Matt Corral were going at it back and forth. And I think, honestly, even now, I think Ole Miss's offense is even more prolific than it was with Matt Corral. So we can definitely see a shootout here, right? But the narrative for KJ Jefferson, even dating back to this 2021 game when he finished with 50.5 fantasy, is that KJ Jefferson is from Mississippi. You can see this 247 article here. Arkansas's quarterback KJ Jefferson has some extra motivation this weekend as the Hogs travel to his home state of Mississippi to take on the Ole Miss Rebels. You guys, he's born and raised in Mississippi. You can see here he's obviously played some good games, but that one certainly sticks out. Talking about the game last year, or in 2021, when he completed, like I said, 25 of 35, 326 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He also ran for 85 and 3 scores. The Razorbacks hope the familiar environment and loved ones in the crowd will inspire Jefferson to a similar performance Saturday. The coach is saying we're trying to invite everyone that is either like second cousins or anybody like that this week. Anybody who's half related to, but no, seriously, it was one of his better games going back home. Everyone needs motivation. Everybody has to have a reason, and certainly he had his a couple of years ago, and we hope he does this again, right? Arkansas will rely heavily on the dual threat ability of senior quarterback to keep pace with a dynamic Rebels offense. Ole Miss is averaging 44.6 points per game this season and has had 703 yards of offense against the Razorbacks last season. Now, specifically this year, Ole Miss, their defense is not good, like I said. To the quarterback position, third most fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. They're through 5 games, quarterbacks are averaging 27 fantasy points per game against Ole Miss. Okay, 27 fantasy points per game. We look at some of their matchups. We look at this game just last week against LSU, which was an absolute shootout, a super exciting game, right? Similar player profile to KJ Jefferson. Jaden Daniels finished with 46.5 fantasy points in that matchup just last week against Ole Miss. Dual threat type of quarterback like KJ Jefferson. Haynes King, right, who plays for Georgia Tech. He finished earlier this season against Ole Miss 30.5 fantasy points, 307 yards in the air, 2 passing touchdowns, also had 42 yards and a rushing touchdown as well. So we're looking at 2 very similar I guess you can say build type of quarterback player, dual threat, able to move the ball on the ground and through the air. Quarterbacks, 46.5 fantasy for Jaden Daniels, 30.5 fantasy for Haynes King, right? And both of these guys against Ole Miss, we get KJ Jefferson back in his home state. This line just seems a little bit too low. I definitely think maybe this line has a chance to bump up, but given a quarterback in this game environment against Ole Miss, who, like I talked about, giving up a ton of offense overall, we can see here Ole Miss in the SEC, second most total passing yards per game the defense is giving up. We look at total yards per game on the ground as well. They're giving up a decent amount, 145 on the ground. And then total points per game that Ole Miss is giving up, you guys, 24.6 points per game. Right? We can see here Arkansas is actually giving up more points per game than Ole Miss. So we know there is massive shootout potential in this matchup here for KJ Jefferson and Ole Miss. I just think given the game environment, given how KJ Jefferson is playing back home in Mississippi, he's gone over this line in 2 games versus Ole Miss in his career. We know he's going to want to play well in front of his family. I'm taking KJ Jefferson over 21.5 fantasy as the first play. Now the second play here, again, like I said, another quarterback prop. I'm taking the quarterback here for Texas Tech, Bren Morton, over 15.5 fantasy score this week against Baylor. Now, Bren Morton is obviously the backup. Tyler Shue was the starting quarterback at the beginning of the season. But similarly, I actually talked about Bren Morton last week in last week's video because we took Duran Bradley, fantasy score, the Texas Tech wide receiver, and he completely was a no-show. Absolutely crazy. I think he had 1 target here. So I'm pivoting in this matchup here, another absolutely elite matchup here for Bren Morton, and I'm taking his fantasy score, the quarterback. So obviously he hasn't gone over this line yet this season. He finished with 15.4 fantasy against Houston, but in that game, super weird game. There was some defensive scores, right? You can see the scoring drives that these teams had, right? We go to these scoring drives. He still finished 15.4. If we can click on these scoring drives, it'll load for us. I guess it's not going to load for us. Let's see. Anyways, they had 1 kick return, 1 punt return, and then they had a pick 6 as well. Right? 1 punt return, a kick return, and a pick 6. So they scored 3 of these 49 points with passing touchdowns. Obviously, Taj Brooks and Cameron Valdez, they ran the ball extremely well here against Houston. But I'm taking Bren Morton here for a couple of other reasons. So Bren Morton, like I talked about, hasn't gone over this line yet this season. This has an absolute elite game environment, you guys. 59.5 over-under with a 1.5 point spread at Baylor. Baylor's defense has been absolutely horrendous, you guys, all season long. We take a look at Baylor. They're giving up the most fantasy points per game to the quarterback position this season. 26.8 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position through 4 games, right? If we take a look at total fantasy points, they're giving up 107 fantasy points through 4 games, you guys. 26.8 fantasy points. Bren Morton's current fantasy score line is at 15.5. right? Just way too low. We take a look at Outlier. Again, there's a link in the description below. You guys can get a 7-day free trial with Outlier. You guys check out the link in the description below. I use this app website every single day. Their mobile app's absolutely insane. I recommend it highly. Link in the description below for a 7-day free trial. But we look at Outlier. You guys look at the odds. Bren Morton over 1.5 passing touchdowns, -172 on FanDuel, -150 on DraftKings. Over 226.5 passing yards, -120 on DraftKings, -133 over on Caesars, you guys. 226, say he throws for 227 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, that's like 18 fantasy points, you guys. He's currently at 15.5. Just way too low here for Bren Morton here. But we go back to last season, right? And I talked about how he was a backup quarterback. You know, Tyler Shoe was the starter, Bren Morton's the backup. But he's not just regular backup. Like, he has experience. He has 2 games last season where he finished with 22-plus fantasy points, you guys. Versus West Virginia here, 22.7 fantasy, threw for 325 yards. And then against Oklahoma State last season, had 33.5 fantasy, threw for 379 yards and 2 touchdowns. He can also run the ball a little bit, 17 rushing yards, 53 rushing yards. Has a couple of rushing touchdowns, even dating back to last season as well. But it's just an absolutely strong matchup with a great game environment. Like I said, 1.5 point spread, 59.5 over/under. Right, Baylor most fantasy points in the Big 12 to the quarterback position. We look at this tweet here. Shout out to Justin Apod over on Twitter. Right, this is a great tweet that I wanted to share with you guys. Again, shout out to this Twitter user. Bren Morton saw a clean pocket on 23 of 25, 92% of his dropbacks yesterday. He was 14 of 21 for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns on those plays. By far the best blocking day for the Red Raiders, with Monroe Mills having a really good day on that end. Obviously, these pictures here just show images of how well the offensive line was doing blocking. But it just goes to show you the type of quarterback that Bren Morton is. He's not just some backup who they're just going to have to run the ball with. They have trust in him. I definitely think he has the ability to run the ball. We look at this too. I mean, total offense, you guys. Baylor's giving up 394.6 total yards of offense, you guys. Second most in the Big 12, as well as the second most points per game that they're giving up, 28.4 points per game in the Big 12 as well. We just look at this Baylor defense. It's absolutely horrendous, right? They're giving up 2.63 points per possession, which is 101st in college football across the nation. They're also giving up 8.7 yards per attempt passing. All right, quarterback rating 144. Quarterback rating 6 total pass TDs, which is 40th in the country. Right? They are just not getting to the quarterback at all. Bren Morton should have a clean pocket. We look at some other quarterbacks, right? We look at these games here for Baylor with, again, mind you, this is a 1.5 point spread. All right, let's look at some of these games. Texas Tech QB, who obviously this is Texas Tech QB, who this is Texas State quarterback TJ Finley. He played Baylor early this season, guys. 29.7 fantasy, threw for 298 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and had a rushing touchdown. 29.7 fantasy here for Texas State quarterback at Baylor. We look at who's this? Quinn Ewers, right? Or Evers, however you pronounce his name. No disrespect. Versus Baylor, 23.3 fantasy, only threw the ball 23 times, didn't really need to, was actually a blowout, right? 38-6, they blew them out. He finished with 23, what did he finish with? 23.3 fantasy, 293 in the air, and a passing touchdown, another 16 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Nothing. Light work. And then we also see Timmy McClain just last week, you guys, UCF versus Baylor, 24.1 fantasy. 234 in the air, a passing touchdown, 1 pick, also had 17 rushing yards and a touchdown as well. So Bren Morton over 15.5 fantasy score is the second play. Just love the odds here. Odds here heavily favoring his fantasy score with over 1.5 pass TDs, -172, and it's over 226.5 passing yards, -133. Let me know in the comments below, you guys, how you feel about these 2 plays. I recommend checking out all the links in the description below of this video. Drop a like, hit that subscribe button as well, and as always, let's cash.